Hello everybody, it's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for my August reading wrap-up. So, first of all, apologies, I am not quite as made up and kempt as I normally am. It's been a long few weeks. I am working full-time for the first time in a long time, and I honestly don't know how those of you that work full-time and produce super regular content do it. Teaching is exhausting, and I have been exhausted, and so I have not wanted to do as much filming or as much reading, to be honest. And so, yeah, if I'm going to get something up on Saturday, which I do really want to do, I did promise you guys at least regular every Saturday. So I really want to get this up on Saturday. So this is what we're going to have to go with. I got home about 40 minutes ago. I showered. And now I just can't bother doing makeup and what have you. This is where we're at. But hopefully none of you care because you're all here for the book content. But anyway, August wrap up. So in August was the amazing readathon. This was a really fun readathon created and hosted by Brianna from Four Paws and a Book. I will link anyone that I talk about in the description below. So as per usual, you should go and check them out, subscribe, all those things. It is a readathon that is inspired by the amazing Race TV show, and the idea was that we travelled around the world by reading books, and so each place that you went, the way you got there was by reading a book with something inspired by the place, and then you had teams, you had different challenges, a certain amount of money you could spend. This whole amazing readathon that Brie created and ran, and it was just so much fun, and yeah, I really enjoyed myself. I did a lot of reading in August. It slowed down very much towards the end because I picked up this regular work, but the first half of August I read quite a lot, which I'm pretty impressed with. So let's go through and talk about all the books that I read in August. So first up, we started out, we had to get to New York. And to get to New York, we had to read a book that was published by one of the top 5 publishing houses. So I decided to go with Yellowface by Rf Quang, partly because I was in the yellow team and we got extra points for having the cover, partly because it was written by a BIPOC author, which gave us extra points, but mostly because I really wanted to read it anyway, and I was budding reading it with my friend Michelle, and I absolutely loved it. So we follow I don't know how old she is, in her 30s I think, a woman called Juniper, or June, and she is an author. She's not a particularly well known, hasn't really done super well for herself, definitely hasn't hit any bestseller lists or anything like that. She has a friend, or probably realistically more of an acquaintance, called Athena, and Athena has just exploded. Her first novel was really well received. She got all the accolades. She's had all these amazing deals. She's just hit the spotlight and not gone out of it. So June is a little bit jealous of Athena. They have a bit of a rivalry relationship, but also kind of a friendship at the same time. One night they're out and they head back to June's apartment. I think it's June's apartment, or maybe it's Athena's, can't quite remember, but anyway. And it's Athena's apartment. So anyway, they head back to Athena's apartment and Athena chokes on a pancake. They're drunk. Athena chokes on a pancake and June doesn't really know what to do, tries to help her but is unsuccessful, and she dies. And then while June is waiting for the paramedics, she goes in and she's into Athena's study, and she sees this unfinished manuscript, and she picks it up and she looks through it and she realizes that it's amazing, but it's very unfinished. She takes it home. She tells herself that she's just doing a writing experiment. She's going to flesh out this manuscript, but she ends up sending it to her publisher as her latest book, and everything kind of snowballs from there. So it is about the publishing industry. It's about whether or not people who are not from a particular background or identify as being from a particular background have the right to write particular stories. Yeah, it was just incredibly well written. It was so very fast paced and readable, kind of book that you can't put down, and just really, really, really good. Really, really great conversations about all those things. A really, really unlikable character, but really well written unlikable character. I just think Rf Quang is an incredible author. This is the second book of hers that I've read. I'm definitely keen to pick up the Poppy War trilogy. That's been out for quite some time, and it's a series that have been on my radar for a while as something I might be interested in. I just haven't kind of got around to it. But then I got Babel and loved it, so now it's very high on the list. So in core pile, I gave this 9.29, which translates to 5 stars. Definitely a favourite of the month, top book of the month, and just absolutely loved it. So that was the first book that I read. I won't be showing you the second book that I read because it is precariously balanced on my display bookshelf. But the second book that I read, which was a sightseeing book for New York once I got there, and that was Heartstopper Volume 2. If you've been around on my channel for any length of time, or in fact in the book universe for any length of time, I really don't think that you need me to tell you what Heartstopper is. Heartstopper is a series of graphic novels written by Alice Oseman, and we follow Nick and Charlie, who meet in high school and become really good friends, and then start dating. It is so cute and wholesome. I absolutely love Alice Oseman's writing style. I love how amazing they are at putting so much into really quite simple art style and saying so much with really not a lot of words, and I just think it's fantastic. I will be honest, and I've said this before, so you probably know what I'm going to say, but I watched the TV show, the first series of Heartstopper on Netflix, before I actually got around to reading the graphic novels. I have to say that I do prefer the TV show. I'm very sorry. I love the Heartstopper graphic novels, don't get me wrong, but there's just something about the TV show that is just so well done. And of course, the graphic novels are very well done too, but I feel like Alice Oseman has almost come back to the story and fleshed out some of the things that they maybe hadn't fleshed out in the graphic novel or didn't feel that they could flesh out in the graphic novel, and they've just kind of refined what they had in the graphic novel. Needless to say, I did really enjoy it though. I still gave it 5 stars. I didn't even actually put it through core pile because I just said, you know what, I'm going to give that 5 stars. It's just so wholesome and sweet and lovely, but at the same time saying some really important things about the world and about LGBTQIA+ rights and the situation in the world at the moment and all of those things. So yes, absolutely loved my reread. I haven't reread Volume 4 yet, and I've now watched the show a few times, but the idea was I was going to reread the books before watching the second season. Didn't really work, but anyway, I'm still enjoying my rewatch, my rereads, etc. Okay, next up is Stand Still, Stay Silent. I don't tend to read very many graphic novels. Oddly enough, I read a few this month. I don't tend to read them or haven't in the past. I'm getting more into it recently. So for me to go back and reread a graphic novel is a little bit unusual, but I do absolutely love this series, and it fit in with what I was supposed to be reading for the Amazing Readathon. My team was Yellow Team. Unfortunately, we came last in the first round, which meant that we had to read a book that fitted in with the prompt for everyone, but also was indie published or self-published, and we had to read a book that had a beautiful cover. The first book that I picked up, I fully intended to read, would have been a new read for me, but I didn't get there. Lana, my friend Lana from Indie Accords, was staying at the time, and we were just having so much fun hanging out and chilling. And yes, of course, we're both big readers and we could have read, but we're both kind of distracted, and so we didn't really read very much while she was here. So I ended up deciding that rather than reading the book and maybe not really giving it its due, but also running behind, I would just pick up this graphic novel and reread it. So it is absolutely stunning, I think. I love the front cover. I love the beautiful art style. I love the different palettes. We have quite a few different really deep blues. Some lovely greens. I just think it is absolutely stunning. There's 3 books in this graphic novel series, and it is a post-pandemic, post-apocalyptic series. In the first little bit of this first volume, we have the very beginning of the pandemic, and then we go to 90 years later, and this pandemic has basically obliterated the entire world. It has changed the genetic makeup of a lot of different creatures, including humans, and so the world is just not anything like we know it. It seemed to have been very much affected by heat, so the only part of the world that currently is known anyway that is unaffected or less affected is Scandinavia. So it takes place in Finland, Denmark, and Norway, and it is about this team of younger people for the most part, although there's a couple of people probably in their mid-30s, go out into the unpopulated wilds where it's kind of madness and the ruined cities and everything, and they are searching for information and to see if there's any survivors and what's going on. And yeah, absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed the storyline. I think the artwork is absolutely fantastic, and just, yeah, I find it really fun. Cats are really important in this book, which helps because, you know, I love cats. But yeah, really interesting, great graphic novel series. So I didn't write down any of my core pile ratings or my stars for the rest of the books. I've just realised. Sorry about that. I'm pretty sure I gave this 5 stars when I first read it, so I'm going to say I probably gave this 5 stars. Aforementioned, very kind of casual, lo-fi. I'm not going to go and get the computer and find out all that stuff. Sorry, but yeah, that's where we are. Anyway, really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 5 stars. Highly recommend. Next up, we have Netherland Bone by T. Kingfisher. This is a kind of dark fairy story. Not a retelling of any one particular fairy story. It's its own fairy story, but it has a lot of different fairy story tropes, but they are quite... Original fairy stories are actually quite dark, so it's actually quite fitting, but this is quite the dark tale. I don't really honestly know what to make of this book. I was expecting this to be 5 stars. I was expecting to absolutely love it, be blown away by it, and have it be a new all-time favourite. I don't know whether it suffered from hype, which has been known to happen to me in the past. I think when a book is super hyped and I love it, like Yellowface, then I go along with the hype and I love it. But if a book is super hyped and I maybe don't love it as much as the hype suggests that I would, then it's a bit disappointing, and I find it difficult to know where to put it. And that's what happened with this book. Don't get me wrong, I think that it was very well written. It has some fantastic characters. It has some really interesting new ways of looking at different fairy story tropes, which I thought was really clever. I definitely can see why T. Kingfisher is getting the buzz that she is at the moment, because she's a fantastic author, and I think that she writes really well. She writes really interesting characters. She writes that it's really quite funny. It's really well written. So I'm saying all that, and then I'm saying, but it disappointed me. I think I just didn't get quite as blown away by it. I also feel like I wasn't sure where I was in the story a lot of the time, and I didn't quite understand what we were working towards. So like I said, it's a fairy story. We follow Mara, and when we first start out, I still don't really know where she was or what she was, like where in time in terms of the story she was or what she was doing. And I don't know how often we jump back and forwards in time. I feel like we did a lot, but I don't know where we would. I don't really understand the timeline of the story. But basically, Mara realizes that her sister is in danger. Her sister is married to a king of a different part of the world, and she realizes that her sister is in danger and he's mistreating her. And she sets out to try and help her sister and to potentially kill the king. And along the way, she meets a dust wife, she collects a fairy godmother, she finds the dust wife has a chicken that has a demon in it, she makes a dog out of bones, which she calls the bone dog. So there's a lot of really fantastic elements in it, but I just found that I was quite confused throughout, and even though I know she was going to save her sister from the king, I feel like it took quite a while for that information to actually been made known within the story that that was what was happening. And I don't know if we were originally starting off there and then we flipped back in time and we revealed what we were doing, and so if we were being linear it would have been obvious from the start, but because it wasn't linear it didn't. But it just confused me, and yeah, unfortunately, because I was confused, and I don't necessarily mind being confused, I don't always have to know everything, but because I was so confused and I couldn't place myself within the story and figure out what it was supposed to be happening, what we were working towards, I couldn't quite grasp everything. I don't think I'm clever enough for this book, basically, so I couldn't give it the full 5 stars. As I said, I didn't write all of these things down. I think I gave it 3.5, but now that I'm talking about it, I feel like I need to bump it up to 4 stars because I've recognised that there were elements in the story that were really well done, and I recognise that this person is a very good author, very clever, but I just don't think that that entirely worked for me. So anyway, Nettle and Bow by T. Kingfisher. Next up, I read some of the comic books out of this giant volume 1 of the Absolute Sandman. So I'm counting each of the original runs of the comic books as an individual thing, rather than saying that I have read this entire book, but I am reading them in this edition. So I read numbers 5 and 6, and the first one, Master of Dreams, is when the Sandman, or Morpheus, goes to hell because he's been told that one of the demons has his hood, which is one of his sort of tools of office, and so he goes to, this is a giant book, so he goes to hell to fight that demon to get the hood back, or the mask, and it's about that. We are introduced to Lucifer, who is actually what the TV show Lucifer, that character, is inspired by, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And then I read the next one, which I can't remember the name of, but that deals with one of the other characters who has one of the other tools. And again, I thought it was great. I'm really enjoying this series. I need to come back and read some more, if for no other reason than because my friend Dave would probably like it back sometime in the not too distant future. But yeah, I really need to read some more. I am really enjoying it. I love Neil Gaiman. I just love the way that he thinks and the way that he puts stories together. He is also quite the kind of fairy tale author and writes really interesting stories, really interesting kind of fairy stories. I love the way that he has adapted this Greek mythology and also some Christian mythology into this series. I'm having a lot of fun with them. And yeah, I love the art style as well. I think that it's very kind of, well, it is DC. It's very kind of DC Batman, but I think it works really well. And yeah, I just love Neil Gaiman's storytelling. I think they are fantastic comics and very heavy. Again, don't know what star rating I gave them, so if you're here for star rating, I apologise. But I'm giving them pretty high ratings, usually around 4 stars each comic, so that's pretty good, I think. Okay, and then next up I read Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, or Gillian Flynn, I'm not sure. So this is, I think this was Gillian Flynn's debut, perhaps, or one of her earlier books anyway. Oh no, Sharp Objects was her first book. This is her second book, I think. So this is a book where we follow a character called Libby Day. When Libby was 6 years old, her brother, who was, I don't know, like 14 or something, killed her whole family. And she is the only survivor, along with her brother. Her eyewitness testimony put him in jail. It is now 20 years later, maybe even longer, maybe 30 years later, and she's been approached by someone who runs a kind of murder, I don't really know what you'd call it, murder memorabilia club, and invites her to come and speak at this club meeting. She goes along because she's been living off the money that people have been donating to her entire life, and she's running out of money, and so she goes along to try and sell some stuff and, you know, give this talk, and they all try and convince her that her brother is innocent and that she was lying and that she was, you know, mistaken or lying. Turns out maybe she maybe she was lying or maybe she was mistaken. She's not quite sure. So she goes and decides to go out, try and figure out what actually happened. And these murder memorabilia people are funding that. And it's very twisty. There's a lot in this book, a lot packed into it. There's some relatively hard-hitting stuff. Child neglect is quite prominent in this book. So if that's something that's a trigger for you, I would potentially steer clear. I really enjoy Jillian's writing style. I really like the way that she writes some really dark topics, and I really like the way that she writes quite damaged people, particularly damaged women. I think that she writes that kind of trauma, the effects of childhood trauma, really, really well and really effectively, and it's quite believable and it feels very thriller-esque, which is what obviously it is. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. I definitely would recommend it if you enjoy those sorts of books. If you've read any of her other books, I think this is one of the lesser known books from her other ones, like obviously Gone Girl, Sharp Objects. I would definitely recommend this one. I thought it wasn't probably as good as Sharp Objects. I think that's my favourite of the books I've read of hers. Not that I've read that many, to be honest. But yeah, I do think it was very well written. Didn't love Libby as a character. I thought she was quite childish and amoral, but I thought that was really well written. Again, like I said, I think Gillian Flynn writes really damaged people really, really well, and writes trauma and how trauma can cause so much damage really well. So yeah, definitely think this was fantastic. I think I gave it 4 stars. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, did enjoy this one. Next up, I read Like Real People Do by E.L. Massey. This is a male contemporary hockey romance. Quite out of normal reading, you would think, and you're right, it is. Although, as you guys know, I have been getting more and more into romance. This was a book club read for the Last to Read book club, and it was suggested to us by one of our members, and I really, really enjoyed it. I had a really fun time with it. I thought E.L. Massey wrote the 2 main characters very, very well. They were a lot of fun. They were quite quirky and interesting, and I really enjoyed that. So I don't actually know what the connection is, but somehow this university figure skating team is somewhat affiliated with or connected to or something a professional ice hockey team. One of the team members of the ice hockey team used to be a figure skater. So anyway, Eli is there in the area, and he happens to manage to meet this ex-figure skater hockey player who is someone that he's completely obsessed with, and then he also meets Alex. Alex is the captain of this hockey team, and he's also like a playboy, kind of bit of a git really. Eli already has a pretty bad opinion of him. Yeah, it doesn't go that well, but then Alex kind of like wants to try and mend his persona, so he insists on taking Eli out for lunch, and then they just start spending a lot of time together and hanging out, and they become really close, and yeah, they have a romance in the end. But I thought it was really, really well written. It sounds like a really silly premise, and in a way it is, but I think that the way that it talks about, well, first of all, the relationship between the 2 characters is really, really sweet and really cute. But also, I think it has some great disability rep. I'm not epileptic, so I'm not really sure. I'm not an Voices reviewer. You'd have to speak to someone who is for that. But I do think that there is a lot of really good rep. The way that it's discussed, it seems really respectful to me. And it talks about being gay in the sporting world and the difficulties of that, the difficulties of coming out, and I think it's done really, really well. I think it's really respectful and explores that in a really interesting way. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Plus it was just really wholesome and sweet. I found myself being quite reminded of Heartstopper as I was reading it, so I just thought it was really, really cute. And if you like Heartstopper, I would recommend. I think that you'd really enjoy it. So yeah, that's Like Real People Do by E.L. Massey. Then we have Heartstopper Volume 3, which I don't actually know if I've got this in the order that I read them in. I think I do. Some of them are a bit mixed up. That's not important. Heartstopper Volume 3, which is the first of the volumes that the new season of Heartstopper is based on. This is when they go to Paris, and it's about them coming out as a couple, Nick coming out as bisexual, but also we start to get introduced to Charlie's eating disorder, and yeah, as per usual, loved it, Really, really enjoy all the things I said before. Heartstopper all the way. You get the idea. Anyway, next book is Anne of Green Gables, another reread for me. This is the book that I read to get to Santorini because we had to read a book that was set on the coast. This is set in the fictional town of Avonlea on Prince Edward Island, which is based on a town that is on the coast. This is about Anne Shirley. Anne Shirley is an orphan. She gets sent to live with Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert, who are older brother and sister, but she's sent by accident because Matthew and Marilla are actually after a boy to help around the farm. But there's some kind of mix-up and they send her Anne Shirley instead. They decide that Marilla decides that they need to send her back, but then when Marilla is talking to the person that they are going to potentially then give her to, Marilla realizes that she can't give Anne to this woman and she takes her home and they end up adopting her. It is about Anne and all the hijinks she gets up to, all of the imaginatives, romantic adventures she has, but it's just about a young girl who has experienced trauma in her life and has now got this new fresh start, and it's about her finding her way in the world, growing up, and just what she and Matthew and Marilla start to mean to each other and how they change each other's lives for the better. But it's really, really sweet and wholesome, and even though you know as an adult reading this book that it alludes to some quite hard-hitting things that Anne would have experienced as an orphan in this time frame. I think it was written in the 1890s or 80s or something like that. So there was quite a different time. As I said, they just ship orphans here and there because they want help on the farm. So there's a lot of hard-hitting things alluded to that Anne would have had to face and deal with, and so a lot of trauma she would have had. But it's really light-hearted and really light touch on those things, and it's really just about this precocious, imaginative, romantic, free spirit, beautiful, beautiful child growing up. And I love this book. I don't know how many times I've read it. It's one of my favourite books of all time. I don't think I will ever not enjoy reading it, and I just had a really great time reading this book. I was in the mood where I needed something a little bit light. I was in a bit of a slump. I was in a bit of a life slump as well as a little bit of a reading slump, and I just felt like I needed something that was light, that I knew I would enjoy. So yeah, Anne of Green Gables. 5-star read, definitely. Don't even need to check. And finally, going from wholesome, sweet Anne of Green Gables to The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This is a cozy mystery, so it is not a super harrowing story about, thrillers with lots of messed up people like Dark Places was. This is a cozy mystery. We are following a group of people who live in a retirement village who have the Thursday Murder Club, and their aim initially is to solve some cold cases, but a murder actually happens right near them, and so they decide that they need to solve this murder. It's so much fun. I thought it was really, really just fun, easy to read, really well written. The characters were really well done. The pacing was fantastic. It was just all round really good time. Definitely worth the read. If you enjoy those sorts of cozy mysteries, I think you'd really, really enjoy it. I definitely want to read some more from Richard Osman. I definitely want to read some more of this particular series. I just found it like it says on the tin. It's just a cozy mystery, and yeah, really, really enjoyed this one. Despite the fact that I don't have a lot to say about it, I did really enjoy it. But yeah, those are all the books that I read in the month of August. Thank you so much, Brie, for running such a really fun readathon. I'm definitely going to be joining you next year. But yes, that's everything that I wanted to talk to you about today. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, if you've read any of the books that I have been talking about, if you have read any of the books that I was just talking about, let me know what you thought of them. What did you read in August? What was your favourite book? Let me know all of that down in the comments below. If you'd like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me some kind of travel emoji, because we were traveling around the world by reading all these books. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thanks thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.